Welcome to The Learning Curve.
A podcast about insights, inspiration and innovation in higher education. My name is Van de Poel.
My name is Sharon Klinkenberg. We are lecturers communication science at the University of Amsterdam.
And we work for the Teaching and Learning Center of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences.
So we're going to introduce the topic for today, and we're going to talk about lectures. Are they needed, or should we just get rid of them?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, no, not get rid of them.
I like it too much.
I like it too much, yes. I want to perform in a theater. Don't take that away from me. No, I think do not get rid of the lectures, because it's a place where the students come together. You get a chance to inspire them. Why is it interesting to study this? Why is the topic that you're teaching important to them, important for their future careers, etc.? There's a place where you can actually share that. And also, it's a place where you can activate the students, activate them in the sense that they start learning and that they take responsibility of their own learning process. And I think it's a place where you can also support them in that learning process. You could do that individually with tutorial lectures in every tutorial, for example. There's no room for that. And as the lecturer, who is often a senior lecturer in the course, you get a chance to actually support them in their learning process. And that's very important for students, that they learn how to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, for me it's also about inspiring students, because, well, we've known from the literature that the retention from the lectures is just minimal. So if you can get them enthusiastic about the topic, then they're willing to put in the effort themselves. And if I can achieve that, then I'm a happy camper.
Yes, right. If I can only achieve it already with one student, I'm super happy. But I think the program director wants me to achieve that with more students.
And how do you do that?
Well, for example, with inspiration, I try to show my enthusiasm. Now, of course, I teach methods and statistics, also other topics. But if I think about the methods and statistics lectures, I try to show students why it is important to learn about this topic, what it brings them, and I show that I'm invested in this and that I'm invested in teaching them about it, showing them examples, that are tangible.
You also have a very nice activating activities, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, what for example, this is activating as in I want your attention back, eyes on me. Yeah. And so what I do is I ask them a question about something that I just discussed before, just to see if they got it right, the retention. And I say there's, for example, an option A, B, C. When you choose A, you have to get up. Stand up. When it's B, stamp your feet. When it's C, clap your hands, for example. That way, I activate them physically, and and we laugh about it as well. And what students they don't get it. I don't know why. I thought they were on to me, but the right answer is always the one where you have to actually stand up.
That's fun.
and in that way, the attention comes back.
But it's also the physical part, right? Because I also give the tutorials. And students sit behind their desk with their laptops and they're distracted. And the moment you say, well, get off your chair and walk to the front, or even in front of the desk instead of sitting behind them, it's already more engaging than just sitting there and watching the teacher.
Exactly. One side note, I did this in a tutorial yesterday. I brought a ball for my daughter, and I'm always bad with names. And I learned this actually from someone else, this game, where I threw the ball around, and whenever you catch the ball, you would have to say the name of the person who threw the ball to you.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I've seen that one too, right?
Yes, and it was really nice to do this. And the students, I think, liked it as well, and we were activated before the class started.
How does it relate to learning, right?
Well, I think for learning, you have to be activated. You cannot learn in a passive way. We know from research that when you're actively processing information instead of just passively listening, that the retention is higher, but also the processing information is better, and the actual learning process works better.
Yeah. And for me, the activation is also by getting students out of their seats, also in the large lecture hall, get them down to the front of the classroom and doing, for example, measuring their height and relating that to the sums of squares or the average, and then make it really tangible what we're talking about. And when we've got that covered, then they go back, and then it's easier to cover
Yeah.
the rest of the topics, and that really works to get them engaged.
I love this because I stole this idea from you, and I'm
Ah,
now doing
very
it with
good.
my students as well. And I'm not saying everyone should do something like that, because you have to feel comfortable with it, and I feel comfortable with it as well. But it might also fail, and you have to feel comfortable with that as well. But I love the idea that, you know, this is a statistical thing, of course, but that you just show students how it actually works
Yeah.
in real life. You know, there's a difference in height between students, so there's a variance. And what does that mean? You know, if you just talk about variance, they have no idea.
The difference between your height and the average, it's this distance. Look.
Yes, it's this
Oh.
distance, that's the variance. And I love that. And you can do that with theoretical topics as well, I guess. I just,
Yes, I also do it with the null hypothesis testing, which is far more theoretical, of course.
Yes.
But there are ways to try to engage. And you
Yeah.
also use a lot of the quizzes in your classes, right?
yes, I also, just to activate them in that way, to ask them questions about what I have discussed or what was discussed in the book or micro lectures, to see, do I need to go in depth a little bit more, or do I need to explain it again from scratch? And I use WooClap, which is an online quiz tool like Mentimeter or Kahoot, and that works nicely as well. You shouldn't overuse it.
No, sure.
Yeah.
I also use Microsoft Forms, for example, to get data from
Yeah.
students. So we do an experiment in class. They have to fill in the answers or their scores in the form. So I have a QR code up on the screen. So they use their phones and make a picture, and then they have the forms, and then use that data to do the rest of the lecture on. So it's more connected it to what they are actually doing, and
Yes.
make that insightful
Yeah.
in class.
Yeah. So basically what we're trying to do is not have this sender-receiver model. However, we know what we need to talk about. We know what we need to teach them in that lecture, but there's like half the time, I guess, where we try to activate them and also let them think in a deeper way about what we're talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely. But also try to create a narrative,
Yes.
not just for one lecture, but I have in my entire lecture series.
Yes.
There's a narrative running through it, a storyline that
Yes.
you follow along.
Yeah.
Do you do something like that?
Yes. So all my lectures have this storyline. I think about them from beginning to end, but also indeed in the bigger picture, so that with every lecture I can come back to what I did before and relate what I'm doing today to what I did
Yes,
last week,
indeed. Yeah.
and also to what I will be doing in a couple of weeks, so that they also see this line. And I think that's very important, which also, there's something else that you shared where you said, of course, we're giving all these examples of inspiring and activating, but merely inspiring is also already something that works when you are able to do so, right? When you have a 2-hour lecture, but you can talk about your subject in such a captivating way,
Indeed.
they will listen to you for 2
Yeah,
hours.
yeah. And it doesn't even have to be activating in the
No.
sense that you get them after. If you are a very good storyteller,
Yes.
then you can do this. I'm not that good of a storyteller, I must admit. So I get them off their chair so that
Yes,
they're,
exactly,
they're more
yeah.
engaged. I know it's unsures to try to inspire them, and we
Yes.
do a lot. But well, if they don't want to be there, it's hard. So I chose to not have the lecture be mandatory, where I said, well, if you want to go to the lectures, then you have to sign up, and then you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So that worked for me pretty well. So we have from the 550 students about 100 to 150 max that actually show up,
Yes.
and they really want to be there. So
Yeah.
engaging is easier
Yeah.
with such a group.
Yeah. But what about the students that don't come? How do they learn? Because we're claiming that you need to inspire them
Yeah.
and activate them. But what about the students at home?
Yeah, so we have the recordings of the lectures and a live stream. I can ask a student in the lecture hall to check the chat,
Cool.
and then they can ask the questions if anything comes along.
Do you have time to answer those questions in a lecture?
Yeah, sure, because if you also have time to ask.
But like to read all those questions and then
No, because that's too difficult for me. I'm
Yeah.
lecturing, and so you get someone from your from the lecture hall, a student, and ask, will you check the questions? You don't have to do this yourself, so that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only the students there that really want to be there, so that's easier. So I can role model with them
Yeah.
the engagement that we actually want, and the students that are at home, they can watch the live stream or watch the recording afterwards. And we see that my top students don't come to lecture.
Yeah, interesting.
Because they watch it at home at double speed.
Yeah.
So it only takes 1 hour and they don't have to come to campus. And well, I don't blame them. If they perform good, then they don't have to be there. And the students that struggle a bit, they rewatch parts of the lecture. So the lecture is not just the lecture, it's part of the entire course design, and it has a role in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the role of that lecture is really important still. But that makes me wonder then, when we talk about, because I find this an interesting setup where students actually sign up, and because in my classes I see that the top students actually also come to class. It's not mandatory, the lectures. But I think it's interesting, maybe something I want to try to see how that changes the dynamics of the lectures, and especially also whether students will prepare better for the lecture, because that's one thing I noticed, that I want them to prepare beforehand, because that changes the dynamics in my lecture.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a dramatic change in this perspective, so I could really dive much more deeper. Really talk about the implications of null hypothesis testing, what the problems are with it, and they can you can make it so that they come up with questions. They come with it themselves, so they are really like, I'm thinking about the fact that what is this power actually, and power doesn't work because it's something hypothetical. So how can we say anything in research? That those kinds of discussions, and that's really fun really to have nice. with students,
and they learn from that at that moment, and then they feel intrigued and inspired or triggered to just go read the book again, or make the assignments, or learn about this.
Engage.
You need to engage them. Yes. So maybe this is something I should try. I'm thinking though, we're talking about lectures here, and should we keep them or not? And when you look at the meaning of the word lecturing, it's talking to your students, and it's a sender-receiver model basically. Shouldn't we get a different name?
Yeah. That's good. I talk about, I think, half of the time. So half of the time of my lecture is indeed sending and trying to find visual ways to present the topics.
Yeah.
And the rest is interacting, is trying to probe their understanding, trying to validate if what I've just said, if it really was received by the students.
And fostering their learning. I think that's one of the main goals, right? That they will actually start to learn.
So what do you propose? That we don't call it lectures anymore, but...
Well, there's this book from John Biggs and Catherine Tang, Teaching for Quality Learning at University, and they talk about the learning theater. And I like that name.
Oh, that's a good one.
Also because, I teach in a theater, in an actual theater in the center of Amsterdam, the Lamar Theater, which is amazing. I'm actually on stage. But... I think that it's about learning, not about lecturing. They come there to learn.
Yes, I also come there to learn, because giving the lectures also gives me the opportunity to dive into the topics again. And every year, again and again, I think of a new perspective that I could approach to make it even more clear, even after 20 years giving the same topic. So it's also learning theater in that sense.
Same for me. Yeah. So every year I spend time again improving my lectures. Yeah, you learn. Yeah.
And what would you prefer? Do you prefer the large lecture hall or smaller?
I'm not sure. I'm used to the large lecture hall. We start off with 550 and then it drops down to about 250, but still that's a lot of people in front of you. Uh-huh. But I also really like the interaction with students, although I have it in a large lecture room, but it's mostly the usual suspects. But I think what I prefer, regardless whether it's a large group or a small group, that students get something from my lecture, that I engage them, that I activate them and inspire them. And if I can reach that goal, I'm super happy. Or how would you name it?
Yeah, I'm a happy camper, indeed. So also the take-home message is inspire students, make them enthusiastic about the topics, so they want to put in the effort.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Learning Curve.
Produced by the Teaching and Learning Center of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Amsterdam.
Our music was provided by Peter van Dijk.
For more information, find us wherever you get your podcasts.